I am in the place now where, after learning the art and practicing the art of psychotherapy, I realize in this gesture of trying to harvest what I've learned and what I've had to unlearn are two things. One is that psychotherapy is nothing more, but also nothing less than cultivating the very human trait of being able to listen. And as easy as that might sound in the beginning, it is maybe the most extremely difficult thing to do. So it raises then the question, what gets in the way of us or anyone being able to hear the other, to listen to the other, and in that listening to be responsive to the call? Because every encounter with an individual is a call, an appeal, if you want. And how does one then discern what it is that the other is asking of me? So, in looking back, I've learned some things about how necessary and how difficult it is to hear the other and that art of listening. And as I thought about that, I realized that it is something that is embedded in the human condition because every person that we meet is really, in the deepest sense, uh, a stranger who is, in some sense, a stranger who is tapping into something in the individual that is responsive to what the other person says. So, what is that art of being able to listen? Um, and how have I learned that? And what are the difficulties? Um, and the first thing that comes to mind is the ones who have taught me the most as a psychologist and therapist, the ones who have taught me the most about the necessity and the obstacles to listening, to hearing what is being said and how you are being invited to be with the other, to be present to the other, is the poets. So I would say I've probably, in my struggle over the years, to have an attentive ear, to be present to the other as someone who calls out to me uh, in genuine conversation with something that resonates not just within me, but between us. And that, again, to go to the poets, is uh, learning how to love. And as I said, I've learned more from the poets than perhaps anyone else. There's a line that the poet Rilke, one of my favorite poets, someone who I've studied for years and uh, keep going back to, uh, he writes in one of his essays, I forget exactly where it was, learning to love is the most difficult work of all, apart from which everything else you do in life is only a preparation. And that's very powerful because it says then that listening is an act of communion, an act of love, an act of being as fully present as you can, even to the point where the other not just mirrors back to you something that you recognize in yourself, but perhaps most importantly, someone who takes you to the depths of uh, who you are called to be still, so that the task of learning how to love is the task of really becoming who you are. Better than that, the task of learning how to love is the task or the work of becoming who you have been truly meant to be. I don't like that word truly so much in there, so I might not always use that. But learning how to become the person you have been called to be. And uh, at 83, um, I'm not finished. So I guess what I'm trying to add with that is this art of psychotherapy and learning how to listen aligns us with others who share the same sort of vocation. The minister, if you want, um, the bartender. Uh, well, yeah, I can say it. My son tends bar, and he's a damn good listener. Um, because in some of the funny stories he has told me, and I'm after him to really uh, put his stuff together, and I would help him publish it. We'd call it Behind Bars. Uh, but he has taught me that you have to hear what the other is asking, and in that asking, what is also not being asked. And the art of listening is, which one do you respond to? What the question is, uh, or what is the question that is unspoken in what is being asked of you? Um, Now, if I give a specific example from psychotherapy, I'm not going to use patient names, but after 50 years, there's a whole backlog of people that I've been with, and we've been in that space, that sacred space of psychotherapy, where I've been trying to listen to not only what is being said, but what is being unsaid. So there was this many years ago, this youngish woman, maybe uh, 30 at that time, who uh, was an artist, but she had really run into an inability to create anything. Uh, so we started to talk, and she said to me, I will never, something like this, I will never, ever be able to say what I want because I was never, ever listened to. Now, that I found interesting because it suggests that to be able to speak what is in your heart, what is in your soul, is that you have had at least at different points in your life being listened to, being heard in your presence by the other who is with you. So we talked a little bit about that, and it turned out that in her growing up, she was one of, uh, I think it was two, but she drew the family portrait. And in the portrait, everybody is kind of full size. But when she brought it in, she was at the far left corner of that family portrait, tiny as can be. And so we worked with that. Who is that person? And it turned out that she uh, was the sister of a brother who had been wheelchair bound his whole life. And so sh the brother was the one that was listened to that got all the attention. And so we worked on this. You know, uh, and being an artist, she felt that her work wasn't attended to. She uh, got a show, I think, at one point, and very few people came. So it was a repetition of what she was feeling in her life. And then she said to me one day, "I got to stop this." She said, "I got to go away. I just don't know who I am anymore." So we agreed she'd take, I forget how much time, maybe a month or so. And she was just going to go off and kind of walk. Uh, and she came back a month later as agreed. And she didn't say anything. She walked into the office and she had a seashell in her hand. She laid it on the desk between us, but it was a bivalve one, which hadn't been broken apart. So both parts were sort of like that. And she laid it on the desk. And I waited, and she said, "There's a story behind this." So still, it's someone who in her life, in her work, in her family, never having felt seen, listened to, heard, present, almost as if she was invisible. And she said, "I was walking on a beach, as we agreed I would take a month." And she said, "One day, walking on the beach, I stopped and I said," and she did the gesture, I raised my hands to the heavens. And she said, "Isn't there anyone or anything that knows that I'm here, that hears me?" And she said, I bent down and there was the bivalve uh, seashell. And to her, that was a response. She was heard by the world. And that's how it presented it, something that wasn't broken in half. And in fact, in some ways, it looks like if you open a heart, uh, it looks that way, uh, unfolded in the leaves. And she laid it on the desk and she said, "That changed my life." So we talked about that. And it was for her an experience of someone never feeling that she was recognized in her presence, never feeling that she'd been heard or listened to. And in that moment, when she had purposefully, intentionally raised her arms and raised that question, the answer was that nature has been listening to you. And as an artist, uh, that was really important. So that was a changing moment for her. The sense of being able to dare that question, um, and to get a response like that from the natural world. And then she went on to have a show and do other kinds of presentations, and it changed who she was. But for me, the key was she had to be heard, and she had to speak out loud with force. Isn't there anyone who recognizes I am here? Really bringing up from within her pain, her sorrow, her agony, everything that was in that history, and being able to put it forth and say it. Um, so that to me is an example of how important and how things that we carry within us, that we harbor as a pain, a loss, um, an anxiety, um, changes if one faces it. So where does all this work of listening begin? It begins here in the heart with oneself. And of course, that's the whole point of Jung psychotherapy, of any psychotherapy that uh, deals with the interior depths, that uh, can you bring forth what, in a symptomatic way, is giving you a clue to still what is calling you in your life. So all of that led me in many ways to change my understanding of uh, what is the therapy room. It's the art of being present and making a place for uh, the person who comes to therapy, making a space for the figures to tell their story, because there's a difference. I learned to speak about the characters who carry within us, using the analogy of theater. The person of the actor brings forth for himself and the audience the character that he is, that he's portraying. But that's who we are too. We are characters who oftentimes the person might be listened to, but the character that each of us is missed. Maybe because of family dynamics or whatever the case may be. Um, and then the others, how do you pick that up as a therapist? Well, you look to the symptom. The symptom is um, the symptom is a guide because it reveals something that wants to be expressed, but conceals it because it is too painful to remember it and bring it forth. So if you want to talk about what psychotherapy is, uh, it is tending to the characters who are speaking through the symptom. And where do you find that? It's always embodied. The small gesture, the tone of voice, the way they sit, um, all of those manners and characteristics. Um, it's almost like I remember once somebody said to me, you know, what you're saying, Robert, sounds like you'd make a damn good poker player because you're looking for the tells that reveal the character. What hand have you been dealt? What hand are you trying to play? And why are you always losing?